welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy. Coming to you from our studios in Abuja, I'm Kayla Megwa. This week, we're having a State of the Nation conversation. From fears of a shrinking civic space to protection of workers' voices, protests calling for better governance, political interests playing out in civil expressions, fuel scarcity, food insecurity, calls for the reduction in the cost of governance, and ambiguous running costs and salaries of lawmakers. Nigeria's front burner is always steaming hot. Our guest this evening adds his voice to these calls for accountability and out-of-the-box solution thinking by the government in power. He is Hamza Lawal, anti-corruption activist and chief executive of Connected Development. Mr. Hamza Lawal, welcome to Hard Copy.
My sister Kayla, thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the burning issues right now. Everyone is talking about the end bad governance protests and the fallout, hijacking of the protests. And that has kind of snowballed into questions about financing of these protests. We've heard of some arrests. And now recently we hear that there's investigations going into terrorism financing. And of course, the Nigeria Labour Congress has been drawn into this situation with, of course, the last time we heard in the news, Mr. Joe Ajero being called by the police as part of the investigation. And the story going around town really is about how somebody who was being investigated for terrorism financing, among other crimes, had run into the Nigerian Labour Congress building or something in the nation's capital, and we're all still trying to wrap our heads around what's really going on. Talk to us a bit about your thoughts on these particular issues.
Well, first, it's a shame that this protest led to the loss of lives and properties. But I also think that government was a bit insensitive and government was not prepared to handle the protest. And what did I mean? And you know, Kayla, a few days before the protest, I went on national TV and I said, can we shelve this protest? And since the government has already called for dialogue, maybe, you know, the people who are conveners of this protest can sit and dialogue where civil society can even observe. And because, you know, most time you know how it starts, but you don't know how it will end or where it will head to. And that was my fear. And interestingly, I was stuck in the Northeast, you know, where I was grounded, flights were grounded. I could not travel back by road for 5 days. I was just stuck in my bedroom, you know, and my colleagues even had, some of them had dealt with anxiety and even depression because of our outreaches in the Northeast. But you see, Kayla, government must not always be politically correct. People have genuine concerns and reasons to want to hit the streets and protest. Even before the day of the convergence, protests had already started. Civil disobedience have started. But that day was when they came out and converged. The law enforcement agents, particularly the police, did not handle it well. You know, and now government is saying, oh, there's terrorism financing, there's some undertone of government collapse, or some people who want the government to collapse. I'm not privy to the data or the intelligence of the security agents, but they need to be careful. You know, they need to be careful on how they communicate some of these findings and how they target some of these people. Because again, Nigerian people would think, oh, the perception is about there's a political undertone. There's picketing and targeting. So government needs to really, really be careful because again, the people who led this protest gave a date. My fear and worry is the next protest, people will not give a date. It will just happen. And I don't want it to consume us because, and you see the protest, people cannot differentiate between people in government, people in power, people in public office, and everyday Nigerians. If you look okay and you look like someone who eats 2 times a day, they see you as part of the problem. And you know, this will consume each and every one of us. And we don't want Nigeria to go into anarchy where there's breakdown of law and order. So I believe that the political leaders have to jump in front of this, but they cannot be politically correct. You know, you must talk to people in a way that you also ensure that you're sensitive, you show empathy, and you also lead by example. Because you can't say that, oh, this would be a thing of the past in no time. But you're living lavishly. You know, there's rascality in spending. For anything to work, you need trust. and support from citizens. Right now, there's no trust. There's no public support. So, but for you to get this back, you must lead a sensitive, empathetic campaign that you communicate effectively and jump in front of it, and also show example of how you're cutting costs, what you're using this cost for, how it's helping in education, in healthcare, also providing social security. What's happening to the humanitarian ministry? Who is leading this ministry? What has happened to the person who was indicted? What is the law enforcement doing? What is the anti-corruption agency doing?
Was there an actual indictment?
So again, they need to communicate this and lead a country with consequence. Because right now, why people are agitated and angry is as if Nigeria is being run without consequence.
I mean, one of the fears that people have been expressing, especially from your neck of the woods, the civil society space, is that that space in Nigeria is shrinking. And this, of course, started when the conversations came about the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress being invited by the police to discuss the investigation they have going on terrorism financing. But we're not seeing as much, we've seen statements, of course, but we're not seeing as much action from your space, from civil society, on the fears that you have expressed about this space shrinking. Is there more that you think civil society should be doing? That way we have a government that is somewhat, I don't want to use the word scared, but a government that is conscious of the fact that they're being watched, especially by the civil society in their space.
You see, it's really a shame, Kayla. It's not only the civic space or the civil society that is shrinking. Even the media has been muscled. Academics has been muscled. Yes, sadly, civil society, there's that picketing, targeting, there's harassment, there's intimidation using a state institution. Yes, but then again, I would tell you, nobody's above the law. If the chairman of the Nigerian Labour Congress is being invited for an interview or interrogation, the right thing to do is to seek advice from his lawyer and appear. Kayla, even I that sit here, I've been invited not once, not twice. Different agencies of government would invite you to come and make statements. And me, that I always submit petition on anti-corruption. You have to go and endorse your petition and also provide evidence. So again, nobody's above the law. But I think, again, we need to be careful. And we need not target organizations or institutions that we know that they represent the voice of the masses, and particularly the Labour Congress, where they represent the voice of the Labour. And we don't want a recurrent of what has happened in the past. Even if I have an issue with how the Labour Congress, undertook that protest and brought each and every one of us on our knees, there are lines that must not be crossed. Again, the security agents and the government has to be careful. But I think, Kayla, this is also a lesson for us to reflect on our democracy, where we're coming from, where we want to go, and what is currently happening, and also take lessons from around the world. But most importantly, we must stand in solidarity, because as this space continues to shrink, it is dangerous for our democratic society.
What does that say about the government in power? I mean, the president is famously known as a Democrat. That's what he has been known for all these years. The fact that he's the one at the helm of affairs at this point, and then we're seeing civil society, who he used to be very, very active with, complaining that the civic space is shrinking under his rule. Is this something he should be worried about, and what should he be doing about that?
He should be worried because we know that he was part of, I would call it a pressure group during the military era, and who also went on exile because of targeting and picketing. And I think that because he knows the power of civil society, and maybe because, again, as a politician now, or a Democrat, a politician who understands the role and the powers and influence of civil society, and the best way to get around them is to muscle them and put fear, and try to shrink the space, and try to make sure that you take away their voices from them. But you see, the irony of that is, for instance, the protest. This is something civil society could have jumped in front of it and tried to calm the nerves of Nigerians and try to even sway them and buy more time for the president. But if you see civil society as opposition, or you don't see them as partners towards progress, because there's a lot that could be achieved with civil society with government, because everybody, civil society, media society, private society, academic society, they're all serving their country. Because everyone is saying we're patriotic, we want to serve. Because politics, governance is about service. So why can't you see us as partners towards progress rather than muzzling us? Since the president was sworn into office, he has never engaged civil society. I remember Jonathan Buhari, there was civil society engagement, civil society roundtable. They come to some of our events, we honor their invitation and also, make presentations and even advise and critique constructively to inform policy, to also inform better service delivery where Nigerians are engaged. And mind you, civil society continue to be that watchdog that also have granular data, collecting feedback. I told you, I was stuck in the Northeast. It's collecting information, collecting data, but also engaging and feeling the pulse of the people in the Northeast at the grassroots, where they don't even have electricity, let alone television. So again, if government does not see this as an opportunity to better serve the Nigerian people, collecting data to inform public policy and better service for the people that they have sworn to protect, to serve, then there will be a big problem.
Interesting that you mentioned the Northeast. Human capital development is a very crucial question that is being asked right now. And I think it jarred all of us, really, when we saw during the End Bad Governance protests, these young children roaming the streets and vandalizing with wanton destruction.
Yep.
And wondering who they were. In many areas, we heard government officials say some of them are not Nigerians. We heard them say that. Oh, they were flying foreign flags. Many of them were brought into the country because of the political agenda of some of the people who hijacked the protest. But, as someone from the North and as someone who grew up in the North, we know that there is a serious human capital development issue, especially when it comes to out of school children and how much we've done. Those little children that were begging on the streets, they're teenagers now. They will soon be grown men. And we're seeing the line that they're towing. Talk to us a little bit about human capital development in northern Nigeria and what Connected Development is doing to ensure that state governments do what they must to improve the lives of young people in their region.
Well, first, Kayla, it's a shame that government would come and say people were sent to infiltrate our country. So what have you done, or what did you do to ensure that people do not cross our porous border unchecked?
Almost
unmanned?
Like an admission of your failure.
You understand?
As well.
So now let's also look at poverty data. And we should put this poverty data vis-a-vis what happened during the protest. The states where you see high level of destruction, and when you look at the states that have high level of poverty and a decline in human capital development, the data speaks to itself naturally. Today, a lot of people cannot sleep with their two eyes closed. So again, the states where you had high level of insecurity are also the states where you had destruction and high level of poverty. So what does this tell us? What does data tell us? If you don't invest in these people, they're still the ones that will come and burn you. Or maybe I should use a nicer word. They're still the ones that would come and ensure that we would not sleep with our two eyes closed. Kayla. Today, and you see, the sad thing is government will continue to argue the data, particularly out of school data. Some people will say over 20 million, some over 10 million, but we're talking about human beings too.
1 million is a lot of people.
And when you also look at the data, Taylor, over 70% are girls. So they're also on harm's way in terms of kidnapping, in terms of sexual harassment and assault, and even rape. So what do we do? What are we doing as Connected Development? Yeah, with support from Malala Fund, I started working over 4 years ago, first in Adamawa State. And in 3 years, we were able to get the government to commit to prioritizing education and ensuring education is free. But also we work with traditional religious institutions where now we're ending early child marriage in Adamawa State, and there is a local law that they don't want to see girls hawking on the street during school time.
I want us to be able to go into that in real depth, because that's a lot of money. So I would like to be getting your answers on where this funding is coming from, what it is being used for, and then of course other issues. But stay with us. Hard Copy will be back in a minute. Welcome back. You're watching Hard Copy live on our channel studios. And we have with us anti-corruption activist Hamzat Lawal as our guest tonight. And we're continuing this state of the polity conversation. Before we went on that break, you were talking a little bit about the collaborations between Connected Development and the Malala Fund.
Yes.
In bringing some sort of respite to the situation of out-of-school children in northern Nigeria. How much is this fund?
So what Malala Fund does is we have what we call the Malala Fund Education Champion. And in Nigeria, we have about 12 or 15 champions working across the country. So for me, I was working in Adamawa, now I'm in Bauchi. We have different other champions, and we call ourselves the Education Champion Network of Malala Fund. And what they try to do is do multi-year funding to civil society or this champion group to support government policy or government commitment towards education and reducing the numbers of out-of-school children. And for me, it's about campaign in the sense that doing outreach, collecting needs assessment, using this data to inform government decision-making to increase budget allocation. So for instance, in Adamawa State, their first priority is security. Because of our advocacy, their second priority is education. And in security is also ensuring safe school initiatives, building and rehabilitating schools, but also ensuring there are water and sanitation provision so that girls, even when they're on their menses, they can go. And today we've seen increased enrollment. And I finished and with the lessons for 3 years. I'm now in Bauchi and we're starting new in Bauchi. Why? Because recently the governor hosted an education summit where I was invited to come and speak about this experience. And after speaking, there was also an opportunity because the governor was committed. Because if you look at data, Bauchi State has the highest number of out-of-school children with girls before now. Now they've come down the ladder by 5, just because of that political will and commitment. And so for us, one, we're leading an accountability mechanism to ensure that there is now increased budget of over 15% for education funding in the state, from the state government budget. And we've seen also growing interest of international development partners like Plan International with support from the Canadian Development Agency. So again, is to ensure that there's accountability, but taking data from the ground in various local government, creating school-based monitoring committees. So working with existing structures, education secretaries, but also engaging high level, but bringing bottom up and top bottom. So taking also information from what the governor is saying, what the commissioner for education is saying. By the way, that's Dr. Jamila, who's a woman. And for us, we're using the messaging by saying, Dr. Jamila today is a commissioner for education in Bauchi because she went to school. So if you want to have more commissioners, more permanent secretaries, more ministers, even governors, and even hopefully in the future we'll have first female president, they must go to school. So that's what we're doing in supporting the government because of their commitment, but also to hold them to account, to say all this money beyond the percentage of budgeting, how much are you releasing? Where are you releasing it to? I've also learned that they have nomadic education in Bauchi State. Again, that's another learning curve for us, and how we can also replicate it across the north. And what are the lessons, what are the challenges, but what is the role of federal government? We also know that there's UBEC funding, Universal Basic Education funding, and its counterpart, 50% from government and 50% from the state. But now we're even saying that, can the government make it even 80%? Because a lot of states can say we cannot guarantee a matching grants for this money. We're also saying, can we increase it? Because, Kayla, one thing we've seen with data is people from low income or poor households, after primary education, they can only survive till junior secondary, and then they drop out. For us, we want to see retention and transition to senior secondary. Because for women that have secondary school leaving certificate, when you see their family, they ensure that every offspring or every child from that household gets a university degree. But when they drop out either from primary school, junior secondary school, then there's a problem. They now fall down back to the ladder of poverty. There's a policy that says education is free. But Kayla, there are hidden charges. Sadly.
I'm listening to you, talk about all of this. There's a lot of funding. There's a lot of funding coming from the government. There's a lot of funding coming from private partners. Yeah. You mentioned, I asked earlier about the Malala Fund and how much it was. You didn't tell me how much it was.
Oh,
how much it is? How do they give the money? And
so what they do is they give grants to local-based organization or national organization to intervene. So they don't give government directly.
So did they give Connected Development some money?
They give us.
You don't want to tell us?
No, why not?
How much was given to Connected Development?
Why not? The first tranche that was given to Connected Development was $80,000.
Okay.
And this covers for overhead, recruiting staff on the ground, supporting government initiative, also training, retraining, and transfer of this knowledge.
Let's talk a little bit about something else. You're not just Connected Development. You do follow the money.
Yes.
We found out recently that lawmakers were earning a lot that we didn't know about, basic salary, a running cost. And of course, we're seeing organizations asking the National Assembly to disclose what the running cost is. Let's talk a bit about that money, because I know you used to follow the money, you used to follow constituency projects. So let's talk now about these payments and these salaries that our lawmakers are earning. Many Nigerians, as you've known over the past few days, have said, this is too much money. We need a unicameral legislature where the job is part-time and this salary slashed so that we can actually get jobs done here and stop all this frivolous spending and expensive lifestyles. Do you know how much the money is?
No. I also watched the former lawmaker, two of them actually. Some came out and said when they were in the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, one of them said he was earning about 15 or 18 million. The other one said 20 million. But still they're defending that it wasn't enough for them. And if you look at some of the call of the protesters, it's also about how much money they're earning and also, having a unicameral and, having them also become part-time lawmakers. I think because of the economic downtime, the leadership of the National Assembly particularly must also show example. You talked about constituency project. We started with support from MacArthur Foundation under their On Nigerian program. We have a tool called the NOM Track tool. So NOM is nomination and track. Every budget cycle, you have about 100 billion for constituency project. In most cases, you see empowerment, you see training. And in most cases, lawmakers would work with some MDAs and also private contractor to get this money out and then take some cash and share to their constituents and say it's empowerment. Or some of them would buy equipment, take pictures, and then bring back the equipment into the market, or maybe buy fertilizers and say, oh, they want to distribute. And most times they don't get to distribute them. So this tool, what we want to do is saying, okay, can you even engage your constituents to nominate using this tool so that when they nominate, whatever is in the budget is based on evidence from the voices of your constituents, and then you can track. And now with the non-track tool is when the money is budgeted, approved and released, media, civil society, constituents themselves and the lawmakers can jointly track, because the role of the national or legislators is to provide oversight, and this tool is meant to help them to oversight them.
Is the Tinubu administration, from civil society's view, is the Tinubu administration doing what it can to cut down the cost of governance?
Kela, we just saw that they just received a new aircraft.
They said it was an old one.
But
and
the one that
assessed the one before.
The one the president
issues.
of the United States is using, because I read, is older than the one we just sold, and the one we just bought is newer than that of the US president. And this is a country where security personnel are still complaining that their take-home pay, purchasing power by civil servants is low. So, Kela, it is quite obvious that there's rascality from the executive side in terms of
Well, they said they
spending.
saved 10 billion naira.
Saved to do what? What did they use the money for? Have
Saved
they used it for
10 billion, I have to
Kayla,
say.
10 billion.
10
okay, you've
billion
saved 10
from
billion.
COP20, the recent COP, they've reduced it. No pavilion, no extravagant travel. It's going to be different from what we saw last November.
So where's the savings? Can they provide us with an independent report, or can civil society come and audit these savings? And if you've saved, where did you invest it? Did you invest it in healthcare? Did you invest it in renewable energy to support the energy transition or the energy poverty we're currently experiencing as a country? Are you leading a campaign to plant trees and you're taking this 10 billion, or you're giving it to Great Green Wall Initiative that connects the green belt across the Sahel and the Sahara? So you can't tell me you're saving 10 billion and you can't show me what you've saved it for.
Well, that's all the time that we have. I want to thank you very much.
Oh, wow.
Hamza Lawal. I know there's never enough time for us to speak, but I want to thank you so much, Hamza Lawal, for being with us on Hard Copy. And good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
We have been speaking with Mr. Hamza Lawal, anti-corruption activist and chief executive of Connected Development. Thank you all for watching. That's the program tonight, but it's not over until we've heard from you. So please speak with us using the handles showing on your screens. We love to hear from you. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayla Megwa. Good night.